So we're telling the government that Kenyans come first. Forget China, forget everything else. We want our environment protected, and we want clean and healthy communities thriving in Lamu, Kitui, and all the other parts of the country.
Kenyans are up in arms over government plans to build a Chinese-funded coal power plant on the Lamu Archipelago. The seaside town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's famed for its traditional coral stone houses and long sandy beaches. Kenyan officials insist the coal plant will help meet the country's growing energy demands. But critics say it'll destroy the area's natural beauty, not to mention its thriving tourism industry. Well, to discuss this, I'm now joined by Samia Omar Bwana. She is the coordinator of DeCOALonize, a campaign that promotes alternative energy in Kenya. Samia, good to have you here on the Newsmakers. So why are you opposed to this new proposed plant?
Well, it's outrageous for many reasons, but one of the key reasons that we're concerned about it as Kenyans as a whole is coal is not cheap. Coal is very expensive. And secondly, is that we have very many environmental impacts and social impacts that we expect with Lamu. Lamu is a very pristine environment. As you mentioned earlier, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has a biosphere reserve. We actually have the highest concentration of mangrove cover in the entire eastern coast of Africa. And there's a lot we have to lose. It's a big risk for us to have the coal power plant there, especially the biggest coal power plant in East Africa.
A lot to lose, but if you ask the government, there is a lot to gain. Kenyans are paying a lot for electricity, nearly double of what some other countries are paying in nearby regions. The government says it's going to reduce this cost. Isn't this a good plan?
Well, we're not against the government reducing costs, and I'm not against about having more power, but coal is not the only potential source of energy. Kenya is actually 8th in the world in producing geothermal energy. Just last year, we had a concern with a new wind project, 310 megawatt wind project, which actually hasn't been connected to the grid up to now. We're paying as taxpayers about 13.6 billion Kenya shillings per year for penalties for not putting it in the grid. We also have new wind farms, investors that have come in the last year and have been turned away from Kenya from investing in renewable energy. So we have a lot of sunlight, more sunlight than Germany.
Why were they turned around?
Well, maybe nobody's getting a cut. I wouldn't know the reason, but that's exactly the questions we're asking. Why turn away renewable energy projects that will maintain and sustain a green economy, and then put up a coal power plant in one of the most pristine areas in Africa, not only in Kenya?
Ali Wario, he's a member of parliament. He's also a member of the environmental committee. He said that they've promised that as a parliamentary committee, they're going to look into the issue and they're going to take the necessary actions. Do you believe him?
Well, I'd like to believe him, but a few of us have read the environmental impact assessment. The Kenyan laws are put there to safeguard us. There's already been an ESIA on the project that has so many gaps, and yet it was passed by the National Environmental Management Authority, which we put trust in to vet these projects. So we're more willing to listen to it if actions speak louder than words. So we would like the project to be stopped. Instead, they're fast-tracking it. So if parliamentarians are really concerned about it, then this issue should be raised in Parliament and not necessarily in news media or outlets like that.
How is this proposed coal plant going to affect this UNESCO World Heritage Site? How could it affect it?
Well, it's very close. It's less than 20 kilometers close to the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Currently, a majority, almost 85% of the population in Lamu are reliant on natural resources. And the coal power plant will directly have an impact on the natural resources. And earlier you mentioned about the UNESCO site relying on coral stone. That's because our architecture relies on mangrove. We actually have a unique setting where we're licensed to use mangrove, unlike other of our counterparts in other parts of Kenya, because our architecture cannot work without mangrove. So you have these projects that's directly threatening it, the mangrove harvesting, as well as fisheries. 75% of our economy is dependent on fisheries, which sustains the tourism industry. Tourists come, for the beaches. They come for for the cuisine, and that is what allows some of the locals to have a revenue to be able to maintain these old buildings. It's very expensive to maintain them, and it's tourism that thrives in Lamu that allows them to maintain it.
So you're sitting across the government and they ask you to present me a plan on how to generate more energy to meet my citizens' demands and to create jobs.
See, that's the thing. That's what do you call it? Misinformation in the media. Currently, we have 2,200 megawatts of power. We're using only 1,900 of it, which is okay. We need some extra in case there's an outage. According to Power Africa, which has done research on it, within 5 years, we will have 2,700 more megawatts partly from renewables, but not including coal. We already are expecting to have 2,700 megawatts. And our needs are 5,040 megawatts of power. So in total, when you look at current power needs and future power growth, we actually have enough. And it's just an exaggeration, I think, by the government to say without coal, we cannot achieve energy, especially if we're turning away investors like the Swedish company that came in just a few months ago. A 600 megawatt wind farm would have been the biggest in East Africa, actually the biggest in Africa, and they've now moved to Tanzania to put up the project there, citing frustrations from the government. So that's one of the reasons we don't think the government is genuine about investing green energy, despite the fact that Vision 2030 blueprint of Kenya has put green economy or sustainable green economy as one of its key pillars. Not an economy, a sustainable green economy, which cannot be achieved when you're producing a 980 megawatt coal power plant.
Samia, Omar, Bwana, thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmaker and shedding some more light on this fascinating subject.